And up at the top right-hand side of the map, we have the red Zerg player. He is Silky. Repping good old Systrom Gaming for a while now, but going to be opening up with a, I believe what was a 12 pool. Looking to get up in Nina's face really early on.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, it doesn't always have to be for some sort of crazy all-in-ish type play. Could be safe, possibly, if anything was like weird coming her way, pylon block, I don't know. Having those lings gives you some level of flexibility at the start, but it is also going to force a response out of Nina. And that I guess becomes like the real question. What is the response going to be? Is Silky going to continue to build lings? He's up to, he's still just been putting out Zerglings, so it's not just going to be the first 6. He does want to get the hatch, but this is enough Zerglings that I think seeing this for Nina, you have to ask yourself, like, I don't know, is it going to be tricky? She does start the Nexus before the Cybernetics core, but if you're forced to rush into a wall or have to cut probes to make this defense, I feel like that's already kind of nice, but at the same time, Nina has way more workers than Silky now, so Silky's probably still hoping to accomplish something with this, something big.
Okay. Very, very important that you actually start at that second pylon, because if you don't do that and you don't pull probes, the lings can actually right-click down the pylon, and even though the Zealot will get out, you actually just depower everything, and then there's no reinforcements coming out for a little bit. And if there were more lings following it up, you actually just insta-lose the game. That's the nice thing about this 12 pool, is you can insta-win the game if your opponent didn't respect it, didn't go for the probe scout, didn't basically respect you as a player. But all these lings still going to be very annoying. They're actually managing to soften up some of these probes. They're getting 2 kills, keeping majority of the lings alive, but does lose 1 or 2 there. And still doing damage to the natural, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, this is the hard part about dealing with these types of builds as a Protoss player, is nothing you have is fast enough to catch slow lings at the start, right? And then obviously until that Cybernetics core completes and you can get out an Adept or a Stalker, these Zerglings just run around. They force you to pull your probes around. They mess with your saturation on mineral patches. They mess with your saturation on your gas. And then, of course, you're wasting your time trying to focus on dealing with these handful of units that are still kind of dancing around, when you would probably prefer to, say, move your Adept across the map, get some scouting information, get some harass. And if you were planning on doing anything tricky, like getting a really fast tech structure inside of your base, well, Silky's going to be able to see that too. But you know, Fear Dragon, we were talking about this the other day, and I think I got to cast another one of Silky's matches recently, maybe 2 days ago. And one of the things that I talked about with Silky was that he had a history of getting some upsets against Neeb. Right. And we talked about that group stage match, as well as Silky's performance in way gone by events now in WCS when he had upset Neeb and Challenger there too. So he's got what it takes. He's kind of been like a player that I feel like he kind of came up a little bit, then went away for a while, and now he's coming up again. So it is cool to see that, but I think this is like a proving moment. Like if Silky is at the level that we kind of feel like he might be reaching, he needs to be able to beat Nina. As good as Nina can be, she is just not consistent enough game to game that if you just play really solid, and don't get caught up in any of the madness or the shenanigans, it becomes very tricky for Nina to pull those wins out. And she can be really good, but you just need to be really on top of everything. She will punish any mistakes that Silky makes very, very heavily.
Yeah. Now, we do end up seeing a lot of lings going to be flooding on out behind all this, and a Baneling nest being added on over here, Nate. This is going to turn into a big, aggressive attack. This is super all-in over here from Silky. Now, the Oracle already coming out for Nina is a big deal, but you need to keep an eye on where does that Oracle use its energy. It's actually going to run over the lings. This is so important. This is going to give Nina the time that she needs to realize, okay, don't use the Oracle energy on a bunch of drones. I'm going to need that to help defend.
Yeah, and the Oracle can be so good at defending, but still chooses to send it forward. That Zealot trying to block this ramp, but being forced to use other units. Nice thing about the Adept is you can shade it in front of the Stalker to not open things up. But as you said, Banelings then become a part of the equation, and you have to really think about the way that these bases are held up. He's going to blow up over a few of the Adepts, but Nina is able to split them afterwards, so it's not the worst possible scenario. And another Oracle is going to get charged out here. The first Oracle has come home with all of its energy. So Nina's actually in a pretty good spot, I think, to, at the very least, hold on to this third base. And this is what I'm talking about. If you're Silky and you go for something like this, Nina is very good with control units like oracles. Those are going to be things you really want to worry about from her. If she gets a prism with archons, stuff like that. So when you go for these types of attacks that, you know, a cost-efficient defense can really put you ahead, well, against Nina, that's exactly what just happened. She's got a very comfortable worker lead now, building 3 probes at a time, got the 3rd base up, and now there's a bunch of Zerglings on the map that just, they ain't going to do anything. You know, there's 3 oracles at home.
Yeah, honestly, Nate, this is a really bad spot right now for Silky. Down in workers, still just trying to drone on up. But remember that even though Nina lost maybe like a few adepts there, lost 2 adepts and 1 zealot, she still has a decent sized army, still has the oracles, and can still continue to harass over here. And Silky, on the other hand, is basically put in a situation where he has to find some way to bring this game back without really having a whole lot of tech. The lair is only halfway done right now at almost the 7-minute mark. So looks like the answer is going to be melee upgrades, and we might be seeing some of those mutas coming on out.
Yeah, that can be one way to mix it up. Unfortunately, like I said, like Nina's got a Stargate. If that's the play, if that's where it goes, I do expect, you know, her to be able to stay on top of the scouting and gather that information to it. Like, it's kind of hard to describe, but actually, okay, Hydra Ascent, I really, really like this. I think this is a much better choice. Go for something stable, solid, standard. If Silky, if you're like, oh, I'm going to go mutas against Nina, I think if Nina realizes that she's going to get into a game where she can just micro Phoenix against mutas, you're going to see the nastiest micro you've ever seen in your life. Like, and it's going to be really hard. Don't put yourself in like a overly micro focused battle against Nina. Good gut check by these oracles coming out. Grab a queen. Going to use Revelation to clear out the tumor.
No, I'm definitely with you on that. I feel like the one fear I do have is that when you go for Lingbane Hydra, unless you get a really good engagement, which absolutely can still happen, I feel as though like Lingbane Hydra just gradually lets the Protoss player kind of sit back, defend. And if they're already ahead, things like, for example, Storm are going to be done before a lot of your attacks and stuff come in. So I think this could still work, but Silky's really going to need a great engagement here. That's going to be able to kind of negate some of the storms and stuff that'll be coming on out.
Yeah. And this is another thing that I think Nina also does a really good job of when she has the multiple oracles. Just look at where she's going to be putting random pylons or the stasis boards and the positioning of those forces. Now you're looking at a Protoss player that's managed to get up to this, taking this 4th base while the Zerg is just now getting that 4th base set up. And it's going to become more of a big engagement focused thing. This is where those opportunities are going to present themselves, you know. A lot of the data, I'm just going to keep saying this. No one cares that I say it because I'm a Terran player, but you know, Zerg armies work very well against a lot of Protoss forces. And there's basically that one big window that Protoss has when they have the storm, and the Hydraling Bane can be, you know, kind of manipulated a little bit with that storm before any further tech comes out from the Zerg player. And that's the thing to be most focused on for Silky, because if Nina's going to attack and not stretch this into the ultra late game, which I think she actually feels comfortable with, then the push is going to be coming within the next couple of minutes, right? This prism's coming out. You've got Storm. And I'm sure Nina is aware now with all the cannons that in batteries she's dropping at the 4th to cover it from a run by and counterattack, as she knows that, you know, this is an army that, as good as it is only going to get worse now over time if stuff like Lurkers or Brood Lords, right, or Vipers come out. Oh, those 2 Immortals getting dragged. Ah!
Whoa, that could get really dangerous, especially with the Chain Blade spotting them.
Immortals. No, the 2 Immortal flank is not real. No.
Oh.
Okay, well.
You know, the funny thing is,
that's what I'm saying. You play standard, like some of some random things usually, that's where the kind of trouble comes in for Nina. You got to be really on top of stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, we end up seeing a lot of the Zealots already using their charge right there. Force Field's locking out a bunch of these Banelings. Only a few of them are going to be able to connect with the army, but that is more than enough. Oh my God, the Stasis Trap keeping those High Templars alive. Oh my God, that could have been so horrible, but it's still, at the end of the day, definitely favors Silky.
That's one of those fights that you look at and you're like, man, 2 more Immortals might have done her a world of good. And like the Stasis Traps are pretty ace here too. Like, yeah, all the micro stuff, I love it. The force fields that Nina dropped didn't just kind of stagger the Zerg army. but the Hydras that were trying to shoot, it like forced them to bunch up, right? And then the Storm was able to get something done. But Nina not going for quite the game-ending punch there. And if she can hold on with this defense, since they are on the same number of actual mining bases, she's got a fleet bacon gun. She's going into something else after this. And if Silky takes any time to try and transition, then it could end up becoming really difficult for him to get the army together to deal with whatever Nina's about to move into. So trying to poke, trying to prod, but the army balance is really good. We've got 4 High Templar with quite a few Storms available and +1 Protoss Air coming in. Yeah, straight to carriers.
Belts on the north side also going to try and distract Silky as they do try and go for this run by over here. And that actually does pull Silky all the way back. The entire army is more or less on the retreat. There's a small little squadron of units over on the south side of the map that are still looking for an opportunity. Oh, some Bailings. Maybe going to try and catch some of the probes with the big run by as soon as Silky notices that Nina starts moving out of position.
Yeah, and this is a big vulnerability window. Carriers, they're not as good as they used to be. They used to have like a 200 damage burst upgrade called Graviton Catapult, which means that basically each carrier would instantly delete like 2 Hydras from this army at the start of the fight. But that doesn't exist anymore, which means you need to have kind of an overwhelming number of carriers to get through past the fact that, of course, those Hydralisks will shoot down the interceptors pretty easily. And the Archons are going to become very important later on for getting underneath those carriers to shepherd away units like the Corruptor. But this is a large army. Oh, Nina commanding someone else. High Templar, the board. Okay, there's some of the Storms.
Okay. Softens up the army.
Me.
Yeah, there's only 1 High Templar that was left over from that side, though. There are still 4 more out on the map, but I think they might be building up some more energy. I like that Silky's knocking down the rocks. It's going to be so crucial to make sure that you don't get choked up over here. But man, Nate, I'm not sure if this is an angle that Silky's going to be able to easily push in from with all the Storms still available.
Well, it is still not the full power that this army wants to be for Nina. One of her carriers is completely drained of interceptors. She does have still a shield battery and a cannon to help try and anchor this. And once it becomes just Hydralisks, like, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot that those types of units can do in this situation. Oh, the stasis trap was just barely not where it needed to be.
Well, takes care of some of the cannons, but it looks like a majority of the probes survive. 12 probes go down, but that's still acceptable right now for Nina. Nina's just replacing any supply that she's losing with more of these carriers, adding on Archons, the big tanky, beefy units. Now, Silky does find an opportunity to get into a very nice concave position, but it still gets a little bit awkward. Some Storms. Are these Banelings going to be able to make or break the difference? None of them managing to connect with the High Templar. But I think that just Nina has enough over here to easily defend.
Yeah, this is the hard part. You're trying to hit, I mean, honestly, it feels like Silky was just trying to hit a timing there. There wasn't much of a follow-up ready. Sure, some Corruptors are coming out. Sure, there's a Hive on the way, but we didn't really see a big commitment in any one direction to try and like move into something that'll play against this a little bit better. And the most important thing to keep in mind, Nina's unit retention for the power units outside of move commanding them into the enemy has been pretty good. You know, a couple of those first 2 Immortals that didn't die are still up. The 4 Archons are going to become like the anchor for the carriers. As long as you get up to like that 6-ish carrier count, and she's at 5 presently, those Archons underneath, 4 Archons are going to absolutely lay waste to Corruptors that try to dive on these.
Oh, this is a brutal attack coming on in. Once the High Templars catch up with the rest of the army, I think that, yeah, Silky's just got to easily give up this space. Going to be losing a lot of Overlords over here. Still not quite supply block, but losing the hatchery as well. That is going to be close to a supply block.
That's a good point, though, Fear Dragon. I mean, Silky's out of money, but he's going to need to spend his next couple larva and minerals on Overlords. He is now rebuilding them, but he's still got to deal with Nina's army. 5 carriers. There is Skystorm to help deal with the Hydras and the Corruptors. This is a big moment. She needs to get those Archons shooting the Corruptors if possible. They are really powerful against them. There's a couple of good volleys. I think one of the carriers did go down, though the Archons are starting to move ahead of the rest of the army, but it's too late. GG. Nina takes game number 1.
Honestly, that was just a really, really solid defense over there and holding on. We saw that Silky was diving around between like the top base, the bottom base from different angles, trying to find a chance to move in. And Nina just didn't actually allow any major openings. There were like times that it seemed like Silky just needed to commit over there because, of course, like you were saying, there's no transition point really there. The transition comes out so slowly. There's not an insane economy behind it or anything. Silky had to do something there with that Ling Bane Hydra army, and the High Templars just said no.
Yeah, the biggest thing to keep in mind is that as strong as powerful as Hydralisks can be, the reason why they're not like the end-all be-all answer to carriers in this type of situation is when you commit that hard to them, you don't really have like any zoning tools, you know? There weren't lurkers to try and keep the Templar away that forced the carriers to move forward with an observer that could be sniped, right? You remove the opportunities to make a play for yourself when you commit to that level of attack and it doesn't work. And as I said, if you put yourself into a micro battle, a micro focused battle against a player like Nina, this is where Nina is going to just run circles around you. You're like, oh, I can out micro Nina. No, that's not where it's going to happen. Nina's going to make mistakes, like move commanding 2 immortals, right, into the enemy army. Like that's one of those things you look at and you're like, okay, well, there's something a little bit, weird here. But at the end of the day, she's able to pick up that win, very well-controlled army. And we're going to get into the next game. And it looks like the matchup, the races were set wrong in the lobby. I just rage quit the lobby. I don't know if I reset it.
Yeah,
okay, I failed.
Unfortunately,
I failed at my
It was a good attempt,
to reset the countdown.
It was a good attempt, though. Actually, I feel like you rage quitting the lobby so late may have actually frozen my game.
Nice. That was actually my
I think
intent.
you found a way to crash me. But yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with you, and I think that this is gonna be kind of a tough situation here. I feel like Silky, he's got a strong enough mentality he can bounce back from like one loss like that or something, but that was one of those games that I know Silky's going to be looking at and be like, I crushed his army on the bottom right-hand side when Nina was going for the big move out. Silky's going to be looking at that game and thinking not, oh, like Nina played really well all this time. Silky's going to be thinking, I threw that game. Like I should have been able to break through there. I should have been able to find some opportunity there. So I'm hoping that just that one loss is not going to be putting Silky into too big of a tilt or anything. I think that definitely should be able to bounce back from that.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And I'm very interested to see what Silky is going to try to bring out in the next game. Like I said, putting yourself in a micro battle is not going to be as good versus that type of army. And the carrier is going to be strongest versus lair-based Zerg because Corruptors on their own, you can't just build Corruptors and be like, oh yeah, they're good versus carriers. And Corruptors are good against carriers, but what makes them good is you get that abduct, your Corruptors, they have so much burst damage, they just, boom, delete it, right? But our Corruptor's going to be good when you've only got like 7 or 8 of them versus 5 carriers and there's 4 Archons underneath. And the only thing you have to fight the Archons are Zerglings? No, then it's not going to play out that well for you because all the Hydras are busy shooting at interceptors.
Yeah, I also like that you keep highlighting the fact that Nina is amazing at micro. That is probably one of her best attributes as a player, is that and that's part of the reason why she's so good at coming back in games where she's fallen behind. She is a micro goddess. Like she is a player that made a name for herself off of her Blink Stalker micro, started moving that out to Warp Prism Colossus drops and Disruptor drops. That is where she hits her stride. So I agree. Try to avoid taking the fight into a big micro battle, and I think that is the way that Silky can try and take some edges. But we're starting up here on the top right-hand side of the map, on top of said red player. It is Silky from Psystorm Gaming.
And his opponent in the bottom left, the blue Protoss player, she is Nina. Oh, that's the sick guitar solo intro. Nice. Noise.
I'm a big fan. They learn how to play all these guitar intros, so then next season they can actually just hire me to play it live every day.
Yeah. Well, like I said, all we got to do is keep raising the bar. All y'all just got to keep tuning in. Tell your parents, tell your friends, get your dog a cell phone and have your dog watch the stream, join us. All right. Let's build up that budget. Let's get our Conan O'Brien band over here to just riff random music whenever we want it,
Wouldn't that be great?
And every time Fear Dragon makes a terrible dad joke or pun, they can just do the little they can do the sound effect and then they'll quit because they'll be way overworked.
Hey, I've been toning it down. There's not been as many puns today. I think I only got
pretty good.
Yeah. I'm holding
honestly,
back.
I think I might have been punning more today, if I'm being honest.
I think you have. I'm impressed. I appreciate it. I just want to let you know, Nate, that I appreciate your puns. Every day. Count my
Thank you. Thank you. As they say, you know, it's much safer to just punt it than go for it on 4th down, you know? You gotta be careful.
All right. Well, I do want to quickly remind you guys that this is just game 2. That first game, Silky opened up with a 12 pool, and I would say actually got some pretty decent damage done in terms of killing off like 5 or so probes. So it was a good start for Silky last game. And I also think one of the most important things that Silky did last game was disrupting Nina. Nina is a momentum-based player. Trying to throw off Nina from her groove to try and put her in uncomfortable positions, I feel like that is the way to try and, I guess, disrupt Nina. And like Nina's a player that, again, you either beat heartily or it gets really close and Nina will just win out in a really close game. Like getting into the in-between zone is really uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, like I said, at the end of the day, Nina's biggest strength is going to be situations where she can micro units, and you're going to see some things out of her that you won't see other, you know, much higher rated Protoss players do. And the reason that they don't do that is usually because they just kind of try to rely on their macro and their general decision making more. And that is more consistent. But yeah, it doesn't allow for his flashy play. That's the hard thing, right? Being a fan of Nina is like, you're going to see some of the sickest plays you've ever seen. Like on Nina's stream too, like she's a phenomenal Protoss player. And some of the craziest clips that have been posted was actually some of her stuff. But it's just, you know, you can't always rely on flashy play, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I say it kind of comes into like day to day, how she's feeling just impacts her play a lot more than the average StarCraft player that doesn't rely on this type of stuff as much.
Yeah, the best way I can describe Nina's flashiness and like where a lot of it comes from is that a lot of players will look at a situation where you're like, oh, you know, I could get 2 more free Zerglings here, but I might risk losing 2 Archons and a Warp Prism. And a lot of players would say, that's not worth the risk. Nina says, I can get more ahead. Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, it's like being a basketball player that only tries to shoot threes or a wide receiver that only runs streak routes, you know? You can make big things happen. It's just not anywhere near as consistent as being able, you know, to kind of chew up the clock and play for those longer games. Well, Silky just attacked his own queen for a moment there. I was very confused, but weirder things have happened in StarCraft. Pretty quick 3rd base, though, from Nina. As the lair comes up for Silky, he doesn't want to bring the same level of aggression, it feels like, on this map. So if Nina holds on to that base, we're going to see another big power eco game from her.
Yeah, with so many drones actually already coming on out over here for Silky before that 3rd base even gets spotted. Now the speed overlord does come on in, spots it, but there's just more drones on the way. I think Silky is actually totally fine if this ends up being just defend against some light aggression and then take it to the later stages. I think usually Silky is okay with that. I think that last game looked a little bit worse off just because Silky was very much committed to making that earlier attack happen. But I think if Silky doesn't get put into that position in the later stages, it should be fine. But man, these adepts are doing some really good damage.
Yeah. Wow. Well, like I said, this is an area where Nina's going to excel. The target fire is really good for her on those drones, and picking off 8 like that is fantastic. And I really like that she goes for the 3 Oracle strategy because, as I said, I'm going to keep repeating myself over and over again because a lot of it'll make sense if Nina ends up losing this match, because it'll probably just be from her overly finessing it. But I only talk about Nina like this because we are really good friends. I've known Nina for a really long time. So just to be perfectly clear, like, you know, I kind of see, this is the things that I noticed as a fan that's been cheering her on for a long time. And
yeah,
I do hope to see continued success for her. I think it's been a pretty good series thus far. Silky playing that really solid standard play. Is he gonna? Oh, he's about to lay down a path with these overlords. So he is gonna try and turn things into a mega aggressive push out of nowhere. Oh, needs a Nidus.
This is such funny timing too, because right now, this was the exact moment that all the oracles actually decided to pull back and stay defensive for a little bit, while I think Nina was just getting up the rest of the macro and everything, making sure that those oracles weren't in the middle of the map getting picked off. And now Nina is going to have to defend against a very, very difficult to defend against attack. Now, this ramp, this little choke point right here with so many sentries, there is an opportunity to delay things a little bit. But the queens are already up the ramp. This is actually a really, really tough attack.
Yeah, Nina's got a lot of money, but all of her warp gates are only just now finishing, and that stasis trap is nice, but unfortunately, the box of space is a little bit small. There's some big corrosive biles coming down. The force fields have been pretty solid. There's an overcharged battery to try and help against this. We have some overlords running forward. They're going to be baiting some of the attacks from these units as the Immortals continue to get cranked out. Now, with 4 Oracles, there's a lot of DPS potential here. Unfortunately, the Queens are what's going to keep them from being able to move on the Ravagers. Normally, you try to focus fire them down, but more and more Stalkers are going to be added onto this. The army continuing to approach forward for
those corrosive biles!
Silky.
Oh my god, they annihilate so many of the sentries. They actually kill off one of the Immortals as well. And now we end up having a situation where Ravager counts, they are getting surrounded over here. It does seem like Nina is starting to make a bit of a hold. Corrosive Bile is actually coming down on top of
she's the Immortal with the Phoenix. And Nina has managed to keep the majority. I don't think any of the Immortals have actually died. There's a couple with almost no hit points at all, but some way, somehow, she holds.
Oh my god, an amazing hold there from Nina. Silky, there's no transition from here, Nate.
I'm like, oh yeah, you think you're gonna get the Immortal now that it's all by itself? And Travis like, no, the Phoenix comes out at the last second for the pickup to save it from the Roach. And that's just the kind of thing you're gonna see Nina do a lot of. That is where she excels.
Nate, there's no easy way to move on from here. Yes, there is a lair that's obviously going to be a little bit helpful, but there's no actual tech behind this. The upgrades are just now starting. It's 52 workers to 72 right now. Zerg players that are down 20 workers don't often win games that go longer.
Yeah, no, this is a really, really well done hold. Turned it into an engagement where the control could really help bring it together and did a really good job. And, you know, there are other side effects to these types of attacks not working for the Zerg. You don't have all of your queens immediately ready at all of the bases to get the injects rolling along. You have to rebuild a lot of that. And just look at the worker count. I mean, quite a few drones are being made, but Silky was at 48 workers for that whole push in the windup and in the aftermath. And he's only just now been cranking them out because there's really nothing else that he can do. Save, send what's left over to try and do some harass. Now, nothing's at this fourth base just yet. He's going to try and get the surround on it. I don't think... Well, Nina's army is here. Yeah, okay. So he's going to back off and she gets that fourth base set up pretty nicely for herself.
Oh, Nate, I'm really getting worried for Silky right now. Not just like this game, I think is already going to be extremely tough to come back from. Even though I have to say Silky is making some cool moves, like going for the Spire. I actually really do like, even if it's just going to be boosting, you know, corruptors to deal with things like the Colossus are going to be coming out, or if it's going to be a massive muted tech switch to try and catch Nina a bit off guard. Like, I like that. But if this game does not go well, if more things keep going wrong over here for Silky, I'm really worried that this is actually going to be a 3-0.
Yeah, this game has been going very, very well for Nina thus far. When you're a Pro Tour player and you keep all of your, especially when you keep your important, expensive, powerful tech units alive. And you know what else has been kind of weird? Nina started building a few Phoenix. I think she noticed all the overlords that were out on the map. So she actually built a couple of Phoenix preemptively, just like, oh, maybe I'm going to clear them out, or maybe there might be a drop, or maybe something weird will happen, or baiting shots from corruptors. I don't know. But she won't have nothing if she were to get surprised by Mutalisk, which is nice, but it is corruptors, as we can see in the production tab.
Yeah, corruptors should be able to push back any of the Phoenix that are coming on out, and most importantly, should be able to dive in and take out some of those Colossus. I like that Silky's knocked out the rocks in the center of the map, as that's going to be like the larger army coming out from Silky. So opening up that ground path, getting the potential to circumvent force fields is going to be really, really nice here. But I feel like it's going to be Nina, yeah, the first one to move on out and take a bit of a timing push over here with 3 Colossus. Overseer comes on in and confirms, all right, see some Phoenix over here. I don't see the rest of the army. Where is it? And I think Silky's got to be preparing for this.
Yeah, there is opportunity. The thing about the Colossi is, as strong as they can be, we know the corruptors are going to be good against them. So if you're not going to immediately recall this after the force fields, you're going to need to try and just use the Colossi for as much damage as possible before they die. So this DPS of the Stalkers, as good as it can be, just takes a little while. Corruptors are chonky boys.
Yeah.
They're very chonky.
awkward time, but there's only one Colossus left over. A few or a lot of the Corruptors are still left alive right there. First of all, they're going to zone back this army, but Silky's army supply did fall quite a bit. Needs some time to remake those Banelings. Got 10 of them right now, which should hold on for a bit. Corruptors diving in on top of the Colossus. Going to be able to take it out. I feel like now is that time that you just say, all right, Corruptors, go check for War Prisms, try and backstab a little bit, go try and snipe off a base. But you got a micro over here on the front at the same time.
Yeah, and another interesting thing to note, just a Nina thing, really likes the Stalkers. There's so many Stalkers. Force fields are going to go down and try and block the Ravagers from chasing. A good amount of them do land on the Protoss army. Is Nina overextending, perhaps? Now, the anchor, the center mast, it's 5 Immortals as the backbone of this. So everything else is really just kind of gravy. The Immortals can kill everything on their own as long as they're protected by the Stalkers, by the handful of Zealots. However, it looks like Nina has decided she doesn't want to risk losing the game on a big push here, even though she just had her next 2 Colossi. Actually, she canceled them. Oh, wait, no, they just finished. Sorry. I was checking the unit tab. I thought they would be done by now. But she did start that +1 air weapons. So she's thinking about going back to carriers, most likely. That timing window might be a little harder to hit as the Hive is already on the way, but there's a lot of Banelings here, too. And I wonder if we're going to see some weird micro against this. There's the Storms.
Oh, catching a lot of those Banelings right there. I think that Silky is going to get into a really, really weird spot over here, Nate. The Hive is coming on up. This is not going to be quite like the last game where Silky's just sitting there on a low-tech army for a really, really long time. But I do feel like there's going to be this little window over here. Like you were saying, before the big air tech army does get on up, Silky might be able to make some magic happen with his army. Okay, well, Storms are actually going to still complicate things. The Baneling find some connection to Zealots, but a lot of his Protoss army is still alive.
I have to say, just the gutsiness to move the Stalkers in that way when those Banelings were right there, and then the force field to save them at the last second. Like, as I was saying, it becomes a big game of unit control in these situations. And if this game just becomes now a bunch of Ravagers fighting against everything else that's here, the power of those forces are quite strong. Good wave of Biles, though, gets a lot of damage done. +1 air is almost ready to go. But Nina never actually added extra Stargates, so I'm thinking that she wants to try and punch this second game ticket in right here, right now. But oh my God, right, the Speed Prism. GG. Well,
GG.
Never mind. Zealots killed everything behind it too. GG.
Nina is great with that kind of stuff. In the middle of a fight, somehow you're like, this must be taking all of your actions. You must be completely busy getting ready to force field and storm Banelings as they come on in, dealing with the Corruptors running on in, and then you notice that there's a Warp Prism still warping in units on another part of the map. Nina is so good with the multitasking, and it definitely pays off as that locks down that second game. 2-0 lead for Nina.
Yeah, and you know, like I said, Nina is a very on and off player, very hot and cold. And in this series, I think what we're seeing is Nina playing at the best of her capability. She's up there right now, and Silky's he's thrown some stuff at her. He's done a couple of interesting things, but man, trying to get the what's the word for it? Like get the slip on somebody like that. It just doesn't really work that well against her. When I see Nina lose, I see like just really good monster mode macro players be greedy, hold off her fancy harass, and then just, overwhelm with either an insane number of units because of how greedy they were, or just some level of tech that, doesn't play very well with Nina's mid-game army composition. But that's what we're seeing in this series. Really, really well done so far by Nina. Almost flawless. Actually, just flawless defense of all the attacks that Silky tried to bring outside of that one early pool move.
Yeah, Nina's defense specifically has been absolutely killing it. Literally, if it is Silky's attacks, Nina has been killing it. And we get ready to move into game number 3. It's Eternal Empire. This is, as we've said many times today already, a very much so a macro map. So this is one of those maps that I am going to be expecting to see probably a little bit more macro-oriented play. See if Silky has a game plan that kind of extends beyond just like that layer tech Roach Ravager Baneling army or the Ling Bane Hydra army. It feels like that's where he's kind of getting stuck a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's getting stuck on that layer tech again. Like I said, like Ravager Ling Bane can be really good, but the thing about Nina is she is always thinking about that next step too with regards to moving to the late game tech up. Even if that push hadn't worked, she was already getting the upgrades for the air, already had those Phoenix ready from earlier on. But I'm gonna tell you what, I don't know that this game's gonna be a sure thing though, Fear Dragon. If there's another thing that I do know about Nina, it's that when she's ahead, especially in a tournament or something like this, she's likely to try and pull out probably, I'll just say, an overly finessed build.
Yeah.
So is she gonna try Colossus drop versus Zerg? Honestly, if she did it this game, I wouldn't be surprised. It's possible that she's in murder mode and it's going to be just, another very straightforward game, but I kind of, she does like to do the flashy stuff where she feels like she can plug it into a series.
I'm definitely with you. I know that has sometimes been a problem, and I feel like that's how Nina sometimes ends up taking things to game 5 almost unnecessarily.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think Nina has actually come a long way. I think that she's gotten even better as a tournament player. And I think that we're going to be seeing something a little bit more standard, but that's just my prediction. We're going to be starting up here on the top right-hand side of the map, top of the red Zerg player from Psystorm Gaming. He is Silky.
And his opponent in the Southwest, the blue Protoss player, she is Nina.
Okay,
Also, I heard that Nate will cut his hair if everybody in chat spams dog emotes. No promises though.
What is? Do you have? Are you like
Any dog emotes
and everything?
Any dog emotes? That's all.
When quarantine and everything ends,
I'm asking for a nice little spam wave. That's all.
Okay. When you say cut your hair, are you including the beard?
I'm not going to specify. That makes it too easy for your dragon. Makes it too easy.
I will cut the hair on my knees.
No, that's weird. No, that's going. You're going too far with it there.
That's weird.
It's meant to be an ambiguous thing so that I never have to deliver on it. That's all I'm trying to say.
All right. I see. Learning from no regret. Learning from other people's mistakes.
That's not true. If I was no regret, I would have just ordered a chocolate shoe off the internet and ate that.
Hearthston did that.
How hard is that to do? Or just get a mold.
Literally did it.
Just get a mold. How many people have like football parties where they have like cookies made with cleats? You could easily just make, like, come on.
Yeah. No, I'm
Make
with
a
you.
chocolate chip cookie out of like a football cleat mold. Boom. You ate a shoe.
Boom. Yeah.
You don't have to make it this hard.
I feel like it should be pretty easy to do now, especially since No Regret's actually back in North America region right now. Not in Korea anymore.
Yeah.
But okay. Let's
Should be easier to find American football cleat molds. I agree. Let's talk about the game though. We've got the Cyberport finishing. Is Nina going to go for the Stargate? She has exactly enough gas for it. It's going to be the Adept first. And Silky with the really fast 3 hatch, by the way, Fear Dragon.
Yeah, super fast third hatchery. I mean, third hatchery was already, like 25% of the way done by the time the spawning pools were finishing up. So this is going to allow Silky to get that creep spread up nice and early on, not worrying about being blocked or anything. But yeah, like you said, that Stargate opening, I feel like this is so Nina, right? Just opening up the way that I would describe Nina's playstyle, her favored playstyle is any build that involves opening up with microable harassment units while doing a big old macro play behind it.
Yeah. And one of the reasons why this type of style can be really strong is exactly how this match has played out. If you're like, let's try to jump into the mind of Silky for a moment here. You see that the Protoss is being pretty greedy behind a Stargate opening, but it's more than one Oracle. So it's not as simple as, okay, I'm just going to flood some links to the third. So if you want to do damage, you know that you have to commit more, but you don't really want to do a crazy all-in that you could lose the game on, right? Mm-hmm. And therein lies the problem. Nina knows how to almost perfectly tread that line between too greedy and just having enough to be able to defend like a half-assed attack, as it were, which is really what we've seen. Bringing the queens in that last game certainly upped the ante, but like I said, it really just boils down to you kind of bait yourself into trying to punish her. But what actually ends up happening is you're either not the type of player who normally wants to commit to that type of all-in, so you're just not as experienced or good with it. It doesn't work. Whereas, for Nina, the average ladder game is, oh yeah, I know this person's probably going to try to kill me because I like to play greedy. So now you're left with no option other than to either play into their hands or just you got to play greedy yourself. And I would like to see a little bit more greedy play come out of Silky and just try to play ball off of that.
Yeah, I really wouldn't mind that either. Well, we do have the Oracle coming on in, killing off 3 workers. That's not too shabby for sure. Taking some damage, gonna have to retreat back for a little bit. Behind this, it was more Oracles being made though. I mean, the 1 Phoenix, of course, is being made, but I feel like Nina really, really loves things like the 3 Oracle opening.
Yeah. I think the reason why Nina squeezed this Phoenix out this early, by the way, is the same reason why she built 3 Phoenix after the attack in the last game. Is probably noticed there's still a lot of Overlords left on the map. I definitely think Silky is kind of keyed in on that. Nina hasn't really been scouring for Overlords very much, so he's been taking that free advantage of having the information out there from those units on the map. So Nina doesn't want that to be an issue anymore. So she's going around, she's cleaning them up. I don't mind this play at all. And then obviously the other side effect is that if you ever try to go Mutalisks, the tech is right there.
Yeah. I do actually like that the Lings try and waste a little bit of the energy from the sentries. So, I mean, technically Hallucinate Phoenix and stuff are not going to be available. But, of course, when you open up with Stargate, you still got those Oracles to scout. And you still got the Phoenix also still, their actual Phoenix still alive to scout. But kills off a few workers, kills off a decent number of workers. Really, really nice Oracle micro there.
Yeah, getting 6 drones is not bad at all. The Phoenix still doing its job, poking and prodding and gathering that information. Has not scouted the lair timing, but I don't think any Protoss in their right mind would just assume that Zerg never gets a lair, especially since hasn't seen anything like a Roach Warren, hasn't really seen many units, right? This is a little bit more towards the direction of Greed that I was hoping to see. But even then, like, Nina's not missing a beat with the pro production. It's not a massive economic lead that Silky's been able to gain, so it's still going to boil down to how well will the follow-up for Silky be? Is he just going to go for like Hydroling Bane and do a big attack again? I don't know how I feel about that. Are we going to see Lurkers and maybe Hive Tech actually brought into the fray? Yeah, then I think this game gets a little bit more interesting.
I'm definitely with you on that. Now, Templar Archives is going to be added on, so we're definitely getting up to that point where Nina, I believe, should be able to safely get up to, you know, not only High Templar or, High Templar being warped in and everything, but I think actual Storm should be able to finish up, assuming that Nina does not just go into Archons and go for a big attack. But I feel like the way Nina's been playing is, no, that's not exactly her game plan over here. It has been get up to the big Doomsday Protoss army and then start thinking about doing those push-outs.
Yeah, and Overseer comes in, and this is part of the hard thing. It's not like Nina's been doing like really crazy stuff. The Overseer goes, you see, okay, Templar Archives just finished. The Storm is about to start. Are you going to do a Hydralisk all-in right now? Because if you're not ready to, you're going to have to deal with that down the line. And with the amount of drones Silky's building, I'm going to assume the answer is no. He's going to try and play the greed game here.
And I'm a huge fan of this. Look at that, 90 workers. Now, of course, there is still going to be the potential for a move out over here from Nina right around the time that Charge and +1 finish up. So I think that Silky still got to be now respectful and not drone any more than 90 drones. That's already plenty. But I think with some good creep spread, good positioning of the army, you can definitely push back to any small attacks that Nina would try and throw out. And from here, yeah, get into that big old Doomsday army for the Zerg side. Start thinking about getting up really, really good upgrades. Already got that +1 melee finished up. Started up +2. +1 missile attack going to be finishing on up soon. And this is where you'll start thinking, okay, after I get up in a large enough army, find an opportunity to get up your high. Start thinking about late game.
Yeah, and that is what I've been hoping to see. I do think that just the Hydroling Bane on its own has really not been hitting the mark, but he's gonna try again. I don't know if Nina's Phoenix barely caught that army move out on the edge. She does have some adepts going to harass on the north side of that gold base, so she's trying to bring that pressure and make it not too easy. Oh, Silky's gonna try and circumvent this base, but there's still a cannon. There's actually still pretty good defense set up to cover the third as well here.
Oh, Nina has no idea about this army moving in from that side. At the same time, I do want to note, that Stasis
He was already ready. Stasis trap was thick.
Yeah. There's a Baneling drop that was getting ready, but it's on the far right-hand side. I think that Silky lost track of it. I think it was going to Baneling drop on the High Templar or the Sentries and just completely forgot about it.
Yeah, what's weird about the way that just happened is Silky was looking for something to bust on that fourth base, but no probes were actually moved there yet by Nina. So
yeah.
All he could do is be like, all right, I'll take down a cannon and a shield battery or so, I guess. But thus far, the armies have yet to truly clash And there's the Spires starting up. Now, is Nina going to build... Okay, there's a Prism on the way. And I'm like, is Nina going to build this Prism and try to crank out for a big push? Or are we going to see the tech transition follow up after?
Well, I mean, a lot of gas banked right there over here for Silky. So, I mean, if you take a good trade and you knock out a lot of the High Templar and the Archons over here, there is actually a big opportunity for a massive tech switch. 42 more Zerglings just got started on up. I mean, that is that massive economy that Silky's got. A lot of the Banelings getting used on kind of individual units over there, though. That wasn't exactly what I would say the best trade for Silky, but kills off a few workers. More Banelings just going to roll in and not kill anything at all.
Yeah, Nina leaves the Archons by the 4th base. They get some really good shots off on the Banes, clearing a good amount of that out. Solid Storms. We do have 6 Immortals as the backbone of this army, so it's very powerful.
Oh,
and
Templar.
The Storms, there's a lot of energy for them. It really is just going to come down, keep the Banelings away from everything that matters. And just how about great use of the sentries, by the way, in this situation. With no Ravagers, it's actually not that hard to play around the Banelings too much.
Yeah, I gotta just commend Nina on some of that micro, but we end up seeing the Banelings come rolling on, and they finally manage to connect with the core of the army. But the core of the army, Nate, it's Immortals. They don't care about a few Banelings going off on them. Silky has to back on off.
Yeah, this army's very fragile. I was gonna say, Fear Dragon, I'm actually really scared watching those Hydras sit up on top of that ramp on their own. Hydras suck against this.
All right, Banelings stopping up those Zealots on the run by, but look, you're right, Dave. Right now, it's just a bunch of Hydras engaging against the Archons, but the Storms are not actually coming out, and the Hydras are actually very, very well spread out. So the Storms not really hitting a lot of them. I like the dodging and weaving over here from Silky. Is it enough of an army, though? With some reinforcements, he's starting to pick off some of the Immortals now.
Yeah, so now comes the next question. Infestation Pit has only just started, but +1 air, Fear Dragon, the fleet bacon, 2 more Stargates. I'd like to remind everybody, in this type of situation, Nina doesn't really need to move out. She's actually been harassing on the north side this whole time. Like, we got dead drones, we've got tons of Zerglings and whatnot, and Banelings have been spent on that northwest end of the map. Like, during all of these fights, she's been throwing Zealots at the expansions and getting work done. Just gets another queen on the northwest side there. But the real question is now going to be, okay, so it's Tempest this time coming out for Nina, so it doesn't want it to be as obvious as just carriers, but Tempest also build faster too.
Yeah, and will be useful if there is that big Broodlord transition coming on out, which, you know, the Spire's there, the Hive is actually not even started up, but Infestation Pit's there. Might be a little bit while longer. Storm's coming on out, trying to soften up some of these Banelings before they make connections. They do still a few of those Protoss Zealots on the front lines, but man, this next wave of Banelings actually might be really, really problematic without some amazingly good Storms.
Yeah, these Hydras, oof, okay, well, going through quite a bit of that Psy Storm over there. I have to wonder, though, as this Hive comes in, oh my god, a lot of Hydralisks just died at that Watchtower. Yep. Zealots are really good against them when there's no other support units. Zealots rock Hydra's worlds. Those Banes are important. I have to wonder if Nina still plans on getting carriers. No offense, I don't really know how the Tempests are intended to be used against this army unless she thinks that she's about to be up against Broodlords very soon. We know that that's not quite the case. But showing Tempest here, I mean, the Zerg, you're not usually scared of Tempest. I'm not sure if anybody really is unless you have units that they counter, but so far, good probe pull. At least 10 of them do die trying to run from those Banelings. They have that +2 melee, but at the same time, Archon and Zealot counter on the northwest, dealing more damage to these bases, forcing these drones to run away and not be able to mine Fear Dragon.
Oh man, the drones actually get pulled back into the Zealots. They're starting to mine a little bit too early. A handful of them are going to be going down. Now, some probes did go down on the south side of the map. One Tempest get a little overeager there. Oh, the High Templar. Oh my god, they ran straight into these Hydras, and 3 of them are going to go down with Storm energy.
Yeah, like I said, in these kind of situations, this is where it gets a little bit harder. When you just play that really solid big macro game, Nina's going to have a little bit of a harder time now. The Storms coming down to try and keep the Banelings away from everything else. There are actually still a lot of Immortals in this force, so the Hydras are not going to be able to punch all of it down that easily. And as the Archons kill the Lings and all the other support units, Nina's still looking strong. There's the first carrier on the way. I like those a lot more than Tempest, but weirdly enough, the Tempest seem to be doing whatever it is that they needed to do, because I'm liking things a lot. There has not been a move here for Silky. No Lurkers, no Vipers. I mean, obviously we have High Templar on the field too, so none of those are guaranteed to get everything done either.
Ooh, okay, this is a weird choke point for both players right now. I think that Nina is going to be the one that just pulls back, takes out some of the Hydras that were trying to go for a bit of a flank over here, killing off a lot of the creep spread and then just backing off. I actually really like that army movement there from Nina. And finally, leading up in supply now, Nate. There is a massive gas bank here for Silky, and it's just not being used on anything. Now, Baneling's being morphed in. Still have 1,500 gas in the bank, though.
Yeah, you know, it would be a great way to spend 1,500 gas bank when most of your army is Hydras.
Lurkers.
Lurkers cost a lot of gas. You know, and that's what I feel like you can fall into this trap of playing this mid-game comp, and then Nina will actually bring the tier 3 in. She's not going to try and just build some mass ground army that Banelings can roll through and Hydras can mop up. This is a force that's meant for retention. Look how many Archons are here too. Like, just the sheer amount of damage output is insane, and the Storms have been on point in every fight thus far. Another engagement taking place. Nina holds off 180-degree attack from Silky, and now the carrier has arrived.
Man, Nate, I really, actually, you know what? Even more so than Lurkers, I actually just really think Vipers could have made a really big difference here. Yes, there's the fear of the feedback and everything, but remember, every single feedback that you do does reduce the potential for Storms as well. You pull some of these Archons and you start picking away. These are all high-value units for the most part. If you kill one of them, they're hard to replace.
In all 3 matches, Fear Dragon, we never actually really got to high tech from the Zerg. Right?
Yeah, this is the closest we've gotten with 3-3 coming out, but it's still lair tech units.
At the highest level, the struggle for Protoss versus Zerg right now, especially, is a lot of the late game stuff that they struggle to deal with, like those Vipers, like those Lurkers, with all the mega upgrades. But we never saw those in this match. And I don't think that we will, as Nina continues to reinforce with the Prism right up front, constantly attacking the northwest side. I have no idea how she finds the time to just constantly warp units in and just rally them over there while constantly pulling off such good micro up at the front too. And she's being a little bit methodical here, but I think with these next 3 carriers, yeah, that's it. GG. Nina seals the deal with a 3-0 victory over Silky. Just beautifully played, Fear Dragon.
Really, really well done. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go to a short break before we talk about that series with Zombie Grub, so don't go anywhere.
We're back at the Monster Energy DreamHack studio, and apparently we have begun the run of 3-0s. Nina takes out Silky 3-0 and made Silky actually look a little bit lost in the ZVP matchup. It was a little bit brutal for your Dragon. Do you think the mentality came in there, especially towards that last game?
I definitely think so. And, I did make a prediction that ended up being pretty off. Like I said, it was going to be one of two possibilities, but I think a better way of summarizing why I felt that way also was, again, just that the way I saw Nina winning is that Nina wins a game and then does well in the second game, and it just snowballs from there. Like, I think after that, Silky does sort of struggle mentally. And I think at the same time, Nina, the momentum-based player, when she starts building a momentum, it's like it's one player that has backwards momentum a lot of the time and the other player that has really positive momentum, and just it collided together and created a massive avalanche.
Yeah, a pretty massive 3-0. Nathanius, I mean, what does Silky take away from this PVZ moving on to future seasons? Unfortunately, he is knocked out. So is it working on his mentality is number one, or is it just maybe getting more familiar with the ZVP matchup?
It's hard to say. I felt like there was a lot of tunnel visioning on the mid-game aggression that was coming out from him. And it's not that he necessarily played bad or made huge mistakes, but he was playing versus somebody who has a bit of that X factor that Nina definitely does. And although she is grossly inconsistent, she still, when she's playing her game properly, you actually really have to be on her level to be able to beat her. And he tried to do some attacks that really didn't seem like maybe they were committed enough, or leveraging some other type of tech that could be exploited. And it kind of just felt like there was a lukewarm approach to it. And it wasn't going to be enough against Nina, who's good at not only controlling a low number of units, but being greedy enough to get away with being able to rely on that control.
Yeah, kind of feels like both of their stories. Silky was on the up and up. He's not quite there yet. And Nina is back to proving that she should be considered certainly top 6, maybe even better amongst the North American scene. And with this win, she gets a little bit closer to proving it. We'll see how she does in future rounds. The next upcoming series, the last series for today, is actually going to be our adopted Canadians. Namshar versus TLO facing off in a ZVZ best of 5. This is kind of funny because we are talking about a North American circuit right now, but they haven't really changed very much since they've been in Europe. At least that's what it feels like to me. Do you guys, Fear Dragon, do you disagree?
I think I would agree with Namshar. I feel like TLO has changed. I feel like TLO, and he's kind of talked a little bit about this, I feel like he's become less creative just because, and it's the famous quote that he has about North America where he's like, I thought I try to be creative, but people are just off the freaking rails over here in North America. So it's in comparison, it just doesn't work out very well, because a lot of TLO's creativity works well against standard. And then when someone just plays even weirder, it's almost like he just plays himself. So I think he's kind of become a little bit more standard since moving to North America. And I have to say, TLO's actually in really good form lately. Versus Namshar, I think that Namshar has been winning more lately, but I feel like TLO's been in really good form the past few weeks. So I'm a believer in him.
Okay, well, I mean, Namshar looked quite strong in his group. I know there's always a lot of doubts, a lot of suspicion when something like this happens and they move from region to region. But Namshar seems to be doing pretty well, not as tripped up as perhaps TLO was back when he first moved to the North American region. So Nathanius, I mean, how confident do you feel for Namshar considering his results for the group?
I honestly just see this matchup as a big question mark. I really don't have any strong feelings one way or another about how these two specifically are going to match up against each other. It's kind of weird, right? People kind